For Maxwell Wasika is my name. Osoro Robert is still here with us as our able co-host, and joining us is someone from Kenya Bowling Federation, the chairman of the sport, Musembi Mumo. Of course, good to see you, Musembi. For the first time you coming over here, you said that it's been several years since you were at KBC. How does it feel coming back?
Well, it's good to be back. Last time I was here, I was talking about rugby many years ago, but now we've moved to bowling and we'd like to talk about bowling today. So, asante.
What's bowling to a layman who is watching the show and he's been hearing about the sport? What can you tell our audience what bowling entails as a sport? Because some of them mistake it for another sport.
Well, in Kenya, you have two types of bowling. There's what you call 10-pin bowling, which is indoor, the American one, which is played at malls. But we do lawn bowling, which is played outdoors on grass. The grass is a lot like a golf green. So it's called a green, but it's a flat surface. So you're playing on a flat surface with the balls in your hand. They're called woods, which you roll. So as a player, I can play 1 versus 1, which is called singles, or 2 versus 2 pairs, 3 versus 3, which is called trips, and then 4 versus 4 is called fours. So internationally, that's the way we play. The game is played outdoors during the daytime, morning to evening. So a typical game lasts about 2 to 2.5 hours. And it consists of you throwing your woods. Every player has 4 woods. So if I'm playing against, let's say, you have 4 and I have 4. We do alternate. I have a turn, then you have a turn. And we're trying to get as close as possible to a white wood, which is called the jack. Whoever gets closest to the jack at the end of us all throwing our 4 balls gets a point. So you can get 1 point if your wood is closer than any of mine. If all 4 of yours are closer than any of mine, you can get 4 points. And then as we go up and down, we add up the points on a scoreboard. And at the end of the game, which is 18 ends or 18 sessions of throwing the ball up and down, whoever has more points wins the game.
That sounds like an elite, classy and complicated sport. What are you doing to ensure that you popularize it? Is there any possibility that you can take it to Mashinani? And in the first place, where does it get played?
So,
do you have enough facilities?
Historically, the game has primarily been played in members clubs. So currently we have 7 greens across the country in 4 counties, but they're all in members clubs. So that restricts access to a certain extent. A few years back, the federation came into an agreement with the clubs to allow members of the federation, where you just join Kenya Bowling Federation, you pay your annual subscription, which is 1,500, and then you have specific days when you can access these greens and play. So we have agreements right now with Nairobi Club, with Kaya Country Club, with the Rural Sports Club and Removal Club to allow our members to play. So that has broadened the access. We had discussed with the PS of Sports, Joe Okudo, to put in a facility at the Jamhuri Park, which was opened by the president this weekend. So we'll now pursue that aggressively to ensure we have a publicly accessible green so that we can take the game to the youth, to the young guys, and do training programs for kids and grow the game. It's a long-established game. We've been representing Kenya at the Commonwealth Games since the 90s, and we're sending a team to this year's Commonwealth Games. So there's a lot of international play, and we have a good repute.
A brief history of bowling in Kenya.
Bowling in Kenya started in 1954. It was established by 3 clubs: Karen Country Club, Nairobi City Bowling Club, which is Bowling Green, which is at City Park, and then the police had a bowling green at South Sea. From there, it grew to about 15 clubs at a point in time before some clubs died away. Historically, of course, in the 50s, it was all a Mzungu game, and it stayed that way for quite a while before Africans learned the game and took over. So it's taken us a while to transition from the days of the Mzungu to us, but we are here, and we have quite a sizable portion of credible and well-playing international bowlers in Kenya.
Having been introduced in Kenya in late 50s, it means it has been in existence locally for quite a while. How is it being embraced? How much of an interest is it gaining and getting infiltrated into Kenyan sporting market?
Well, right now, when we transitioned and started a facility to allow more Kenyans to access, we have got a lot of interest from local Kenyans. And right now, the team has changed in complexion. We're all Kenyans now and Africans playing. When I started many years back, there were quite a number of Mzungu still playing for Kenya. And there's a age also difference. The youngest person to ever be chairman of the federation. So also trying to change the age group. It was seemed to be a slightly sport for older retired people historically. Now we have bowlers in their 20s and their 30s who are playing, and we want to even get people in their teenage years to come and play.
Yes, a big one there that you're talking about it, and off camera we are talking about you will be taking a team to the Commonwealth Games this year. Can you give us a calendar of events for your team so far?
So far we have just concluded our national trials. In fact, we concluded it last weekend. Yeah. Next weekend we have the first of our national competitions, which is called the National Pairs, will be played at Limuru Country Club.
Yes.
And then going forward, month on month in May, we have a national singles, which will be played at Ruiru Sports Club. And in June, then we get into preparation for the Africa States Tournament. Internationally, we are sending a team this April to the World Indoor Championships in the UK, to part of our national team members to go and get experience of bowling in the UK as preparation for Commonwealth Games, and they will be traveling towards the end of April. Outside of that, every weekend, the clubs themselves do have club tournaments. So as we speak, there's a club tournament going on at Mombasa, in Limuru. So that keeps the local players, because not everybody makes the national team, keep on playing competitively at your club level and at the national level. Yeah. So national events, we have more or less an event every month as a national event, which means players come from Joro, they come from Mombasa. Sometimes in April, we'll have a big event in Mombasa over the Easter weekend. It's called the Coast Open. And a lot of our bowlers from upcountry will travel down to Mombasa and compete against the best Mombasa has to offer.
For Kenya taking part in the international events, especially the upcoming Commonwealth Games set for Birmingham, I know athletics gets a priority, a lion's share in terms of producing the number of players to represent the country. How many allocations have you gotten so far?
We maybe take historically, the last Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast were given 2 allocations. So we went a man and a lady who played in the singles. But in previous games in Delhi, in the previous editions, we have gone up to teams of 5-6 bowlers. It all depends on the committee that was set by Minister Mina this weekend, who determines the final numbers of this team, and then each sport is given an allocation. What we have agreed with NOC is that every sport will be guaranteed at least 2 slots in the Commonwealth Games so that everybody gets a chance to go. We are pushing to get at least another 2 slots so that we can compete in half of the events, because what happens at Commonwealth Games, there are up to 8 gold medals to be competed for in bowls. If you go with only 2 people, you can only compete for 2. If you go with an extra 2, you can compete for 4 of the 8, which it broadens your chances of getting a result. Right, and that's where you look at it and say, yeah, you have to compete in slightly more disciplines. But again, we're cognizant of the fact that there's pressure from all other sports, judo, boxing. Everybody needs to go. Everybody has players, so we have to balance it out. But I'm sure with the NOC team under President Paul Tegat, will find a way to make sure everybody gets represented.
How is the mood in the camp from players who are expected to represent the country in bowling? Are they very optimistic that participating and representing Kenya at the global stage, they can bring glory back home?
We have gotten very competitive. We still need a lot of exposure. At the last games, the best player for Kenya on the singles was Eunice Wambui, who finished 14th. Right? So we are trying to get at least our target this year to make the quarterfinals, because you have to build up experience over time. You don't just do, and then from there you move to a semi, and eventually you move to a final. We need to broaden our scope because our target is the 2032 Olympic Games. Bowling will be an exhibition sport in 2032. And if we start now by getting sure that at the earliest possible opportunity we have a publicly accessible bowling green so that now my players can practice daily. Because my limitation is that I'm using private facilities, so I can only have 2 or 3 days in a week. To get to international level, you need to be daily practicing on a facility that is publicly available.
Yes. And that one brings us to the question of funding. How do you manage to funding bowling in the country? Because you told us that there are only 7 clubs that are allowed to have the bowling and others that are coming up. But how do you fund the sport?
Primarily, our basic source of funding is internal.
Yes.
So we have first, as our individual members join and pay a subscription fee, and also pay a competition fee whenever you play. That gives a bit of funds that can allow you to run the competitions. Yes. But further to that, then we try and work with sponsors to do events. Our last major event we hosted was the Africa States Tournaments in 2019. We hosted it at Nairobi Club and Karen Club. We had support from, of course, the clubs themselves by giving us facilities. We got sponsors on board, and then through that, we managed to pay the costs of hosting. We are, of course, now under the Sports Fund. So Sports Fund will be financing our trip now to the UK this time, which makes it easier because before it was self-funding, which also limited access. So we are always look out for sponsors to come and support the sport, and that's what the federation is trying to do, and produce a product that is sellable in the market, that people look and say, yes, we can support bowling and we can go forward. But yes, we are primarily dependent on sponsors. Yeah.
And then the major one is also now the development of the game. Because for most part, I think, has it been there in the Olympics, or it is now that it is some of the new games that were named coming up to the Olympics?
We are not yet in the Olympics. Yeah. We are trying to get into the Olympics. That's why 2032 will be an exhibition game.
Yes.
Right? So similar to rugby's journey, where you start discussing an Olympics, they don't add every session. They add every 4-6 years. They look at you. So I've been given a slot in 2032. Yeah. We go have an exhibition game. If they like what they see, then it can add into the calendar. Yes. So as World Bowls now, we are affiliated to World Bowls. We are working towards that. We've done a lot of review of our processes internationally to see how to grow the game and get to that stage. So there's a lot of work in progress to get to the Olympics. Yes. But we are still having now World Annual Championships, which are biannual, so every odd year, 2023, 2025, and also that will be able the game to grow as a World Championships.
You talked of accessibility to these private facilities being a tall order, because I understand someone has to be a member for them to access these 7 country clubs you mentioned where training can happen. I don't know. How are you talking to the government? What is the progress over in terms of reaching out to the government to ensure that you independently have your own facilities where those interested in the sport or those already associating themselves with bowling can get an opportunity to go train and play anytime they feel like?
As I said, we had long discussions with the PSG Okudu, and he assured us in writing that we will be given a slot in the Jamhuri Park to do a bowling green in phase 2. It's just that phase 1 had already begun, and phase 1 only had a few sports included, which is, as you saw, football and rugby, the bigger sports. But not just bowling, tennis, netball, we all need facilities. So what we're pushing for him is in the next 2 years to give us a space to quickly establish the facility. Internationally, bowling now is played either on grass or on AstroTurf. And we're thinking was AstroTurf allows you to play more games per day. So we're looking to do an AstroTurf facility at Jamhuri Park as soon as possible. And as the president said, it will be free access, right? And we then, as Kenya Bowling, will put in a program and get coaches to train children. We'll get the equipment. We just need to get the space. The rest of the program, we already worked out a program, and we have sponsors in line to help us run the program. Yeah. But the point of access, we need assistance from the government, and the Ministry of Sports will be key in that. And the primary place where immediately we can have a success, quick wins, is Jamhuri Park.
Yeah. Talk to us about the programs that you have to develop this game to touch every corner of Kenya.
Short term may not be the case because, as you said, the challenge is establishing a bowling green is about 10-12 million shillings. Yeah. Which means unless you have funding to move it across, it's hard. Logic is to start a program here. We're in 4 counties, that is Nairobi, Kiambu, Mombasa, and Nakuru. Yes. The aim is to revive the greens now in Mount Kenya area, right, and also move one into places like Kisumu. So I'd have a regional reach where if I have across the country in those 3 places, whichever region you're in, you're within 100 kilometers of a bowling green. So that then you can have training programs that way. So that would be the quick win solution. But we want to start with at least Nairobi first. That's where the numbers are currently. But without an accessible facility, I cannot really grow the numbers.
But there is huge interest.
There is huge interest. We have now university students who have come on board. We're training students from universities, and that is where the growth is, because they are young and they're hungry and want to play, and it's a very enjoyable game.
During every international event, there are people who talk about briefcase federations. Personally, I've heard about bowling. It's a sport that has existed in Kenya. I've heard about the officials. But how does the secretariat look like in terms of you people in administrative and governance leadership positions? And how is the working arrangement? Are you striving to push it to another level in terms of growth and development? Because like previous editions of international events, Olympics in Rio and Commonwealth Games in Delhi, there came, federations which we've never heard about, and now they are seeking to get government support so that, their players can represent the country. I know it is something exceptional of bowling, right?
Exception bowling is that because we are not big in terms of numbers because of facilities. Our headquarters is at Nairobi Club. We have hosted us since the establishment of this federation from 1960 up to now. And we use their facilities in terms of meetings and so on and so forth. The executive has 6 members who are all voluntary members, right? We do not have an...
Just working for passion.
We don't have an employee, so to speak, but that is part of the plans my office put in place in our strategic plan, is to get to a point where we have coaches on hire and then a CEO. But to do that, we need to generate the revenues by having more numbers. So those are the things we need assistance in, because once you can establish, for instance, a public green, we have then a product to sell to people where I can give sessions and I can put coaches and get a more professional undertaking. But nonetheless, we comply with all the regiments of the Sports Act. We have our auditors, we have our bankers, and we have a long-established tradition, and we have a good record-keeping from all the years. We still have our minutes from 1954. So we are a long-established, and we have had a good tradition of keeping everything up to speed.
You mean you've already complied with Sports Act of 2013?
We're registered.
Yet the other, reputable sporting disciplines in the name of football, which haven't complied up to date, despite the funding they get from the government.
See, that
means you're doing good job.
We are fully compliant with the Sports Act. We are registered and we are well known there. It's just that, as you said, because we are not
vocal.
Not even that. Yeah. We're not sexy. So we find that the other guys who have good photo ops and big numbers, bowling is not in a stadium, so I cannot fill a stadium with 60,000 people.
Yeah.
Right? Mine is more targeted. So I'd say bowling is more like golf, where you'll have your targeted guys and the guys who come and play, but you're not a crowd puller.
Yes.
But we can be a crowd puller. When we had the AST, we had good numbers in terms of bowling. When you have 200, 300 people coming for a bowling event, those are good numbers, right? Yes. Because we're never going to do a stadium of 60,000. Yeah. And those numbers can be useful to sponsors in a different way. Our events, that time we had Britam supported us, Safaricom. So we do have support from corporates. Yeah. The challenge, of course, is my check is not as big as football's check. But nonetheless, I do get a check. The key is if I have more players, especially at the youth level playing, right, that translates into better visibility, better numbers. That means I can do more things on a bigger scale. And that's what we're looking to do. Find our place in the scheme of things and play there.
And me and you attended a workshop during midweek where, we were being told how to generate revenue. You mentioned about a critical aspect of when you start generating revenue. I think it's when you will have a well-working secretariat in place and, the staff getting put on remuneration package so that to push the operations of the federation further. How strategically are you seeking to approach this issue of revenue generation, going by what we had at the Hemingways from Yale Patton and Dondi Machinin?
See, part of the plans we had in our strategic plan to increase our revenues was twofold. One is to grow numbers, because we're a federation where you can join today and just pay your fee, and everyone pays 1,500. So if I have 1,000 people paying, that translates
into... That's per year?
Per year, yes. It's an annual fee. Yes. Right? So I need numbers first. So that gives me enough money then to say I'm going to pay a salary for a guy to do A, B, C, D. Yes. So I need to grow numbers at the very beginning. Once I have a critical mass of numbers, and then you look at rugby where the numbers have grown, where now there are 4 different leagues, and I go back to the days when we were in the rugby circles, we only had Kenya Cup. The number of leagues means you have more eyes watching, you're better accessible to sponsors, more products to sell. Yeah. We'll have to have more competitions then. Those more competitions will share out to more clubs, and it will be more accessible for a guy to say, I'm willing to invest money in setting up a bowling green because, yes, I will get the revenue back as a private investor. That is what we need to do. So as we are looking at it to grow our numbers, we have grown substantially, and now our tournaments are Each bowls tournament in the last 2 years has at least 50 to 60 entrants. And from the days when you had 20 people competing for the national singles, where now I'm constrained for space to how to fit them in, means I am growing. But I still need to grow much faster. So all those things mean I'm talking to you guys today, I'm talking to the public, come and play bowls. Come join the federation, which is from our website, you can get links to us, www.bowlskenya.com. And from us, we will show you how to play immediately. We'll provide you with the woods. We have them so that there's no equipment cost. All you need to play bowling is to come and kick off your shoes and play barefoot. The grass is perfect, soft, so there's no investment. Later on, when you get good at it and you want to buy your equipment is available, right? And it can be brought in. We bring it in from now Australia or South Africa, but we'll organize that for you.
Zoro, are you enrolling for one very soon?
Yeah, I might. You never know.
But you're welcome to come and play. The federation is very open and we have accessible facilities. Just join the federation. It's really simply 1,500 shillings. And you're on and you're playing bowls tomorrow.
You have a huge reputation in terms of getting actively involved in matters, sports, governance, administration, and even playing. You played golf, not necessarily golf, rugby, before with mini machine at the University of Nairobi. Do you consider sport being a huge asset in Kenya?
It is a great growth for the youth. It gives you direction. I look back and say in my rugby days, it's part of the reasons why who I am today. It taught you a lot of discipline, the ability to do work, and it's important for our youth to play as much sports as possible. Those traits carry through your whole life. So sports is a very key thing. As was mentioned in the seminar we're in on Wednesday, sports international has become a big industry. The monies that you talk about, the clubs are generating, once they put money in, it goes to new levels. You look at, in a simple local example, we are told Sports Club Simba is on sale for 1 billion shillings.
That's Kenyan.
Yes, Kenya shillings,
Yeah.
$10 million.
Yeah.
Can you sell any Kenyan football club for that amount of money?
No.
But yet, they're here, they're next door. We're in a bigger economy. Why not? It is structures. When you put structures in place, things work. So at bowling, we're putting structures. We have a clear hierarchy of how we do things, our selection processes. You know when you come to play bowls, day one, if I want to make Kenya next year, this is what I need to do.
Selection is on merit.
Yes, it's on merit and it's clear. It's mathematical. Tell you, you do your trials, you do this, you do this, you do this, you make the team. You make the team, you travel, right? And go and represent the country. At international level now, we're doing programs to train coaches so that now we get our international bowlers up to the international standards. We're still lagging behind the best nations in bowling. The best nations in bowling in the world are South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and England.
Yeah.
But as you saw in rugby sevens, we can compete with them if we put our head to it. So the same principle in bowling we need to apply.
And the other question that usually comes in for people who are willing to join and everything is they look at the sport, is it lucrative for a sportsman in bowling?
Maybe to explain this way, we had a lady who is now playing professional in Australia.
Yeah.
She came, played for Kenya, then found an opportunity to travel, and now she plays in Australia. And there the league is fully professional. People earn up to 10 million shillings a year playing bowls. Right? It's the same, as we said, with football, that's the Premier League of bowling, so to speak, in Australia, where it's fully professional and people play. If you get good enough, you can make it. Right? And as we have seen, even in rugby recently, where the lady has gone to play in Japan.
Yes.
It is you to get to the world levels. Our role as a federation is to ensure we give you facilities and training that can get you there, and we are going to do that for you as a player. Then if your talent is good enough, you will get there, and you'll play internationally.
Based on your experience of dealing with sports locally, what do you think has been ailing sports? Because at some point we are stagnated somewhere and there's no progress being made in some disciplines though.
Is a thing we're doing. I'm also sitting on a strategic performance committee at NOC, and we're trying to put together from NOC now level for all sporting federations strategic plans for you to grow your sport. There's been a lack of strategic direction. One of the reasons, simple things to get registered with the sports act was sports federations had to have strategic plans. That's when they discovered nobody had strategic plans.
Not a short-term one, not a long-term
Nobody had strategic plans. So when we came with our strategic plan as bowling, they were very surprised. Yes, some people had strategic plans, but many federations, it was, we wake up in the morning, what are we going to do today? There's no saying, where are we going? We as bowling are working on a plan to make the 2032 Olympic Games.
Yes.
That's 10 years from now. You need to plan now for that. And that's our biggest challenge as sports administrators, is if you don't plan and you're always, hey, I need to win a league next week. That's your biggest challenge is next week. You're not going to go anywhere as a sports. I am looking, saying, I need to find children kids now to start training at Kibera who are 12, 13, 14.
Yes.
In 10 years' time, they'll be 22. They'll have 10 years of experience. They can compete at the top levels. Internationally, the world champions in bowls are in their 20s. Because at that point in time now, people like me are old. We're too old to be playing this game. Yes, luckily in bowls, you can play until you are 70s and 80s. So as a social game, you can play forever. But competitively, now it's a young man's game because they do fitness, they do gym, stuff which is a new thing in Kenya. Most of our players just wake up and play on Saturday in most sports. Right? Even getting players to do gym at rugby, at football is hard, and they are the bigger sports. So those things of understanding your diet matters, what I eat, it affects how I play, understanding the anti-doping rules and the regulations. All those small things add up to making players better. So every federation has to do the same. We at bowling have said, well, that is our focus. And our focus, as you said, is
You
on
started
games.
setting the pace for others to
So,
follow.
yes, so put your strategic plan in order. Review it, analyze it, and say, what did I fail? What did I not achieve? Why not?
Yes.
Then you have targets. But if I ask you to produce a strategic plan tomorrow, you will struggle at this table for guys to tell you what is their strategic plan.
So what's happening this particular weekend in terms of any action activity for
This
bowling?
particular weekend, there were no major events. There's just one event in Mombasa, the social run. But next weekend, we have our national pairs at Limuru Country Club, which is up the road. You're all invited to please come. It plays Saturday and Sunday, the full day. We start at 9 in the morning. We finish at 5 in the evening. So it will be 2 highly competitive days of bowling. You'll see the best bowlers in Kenya. So guys are traveling, the people coming up from Mombasa, from Joro, all the clubs in Nairobi will be represented in Kiambu County. So if you have a chance, Karibu, it's free entry. So you just have to get to Limuru Country Club next week, Saturday and Sunday, and watch bowling at the top level.
Having been
Karibuni
a
sana.
former player for Mean Machine, they are playing this particular afternoon. Are you seeking to grace the finals, championship against Catholic monks?
And not only was I a former player, as a chairman, as a captain, and as a head coach for Mean Machine for many years. So for sure.
So you played together with Jeff Gangler, who is in charge
No,
of
Jeff
Kenya's
Gangler.
president.
Jeff Gangler played for me as his coach. I played with Thomas Opio, Tolbert Onyango, Sami Kakame. Right? So those are the people who played both
You're a
at.
legend.
We both played both at Mean Machine and for Kenya, and I also now coached Kenya later on. So I've coached quite a number of the players. You see, Andrew Amonde, all those players played under me. Collins Injera, they were my players.
What do you make of, the standards of rugby? Are we getting to another level? Singapore Sevens 2016 under the late Benjamin Naimba. Can we replicate it this particular season under Innocent Namco Simio?
What I'd say is this: 2016, many things came together. The coach and the team worked together.
Yes.
He had a good crop of players. So we still need to produce an excellent crop of players. These guys at that level, we wait and see. I'm sure they can be competitive, and I expect them to make the semis, even at the Commonwealth Games. They should be able to make the semis and not the final. So you must believe. So they are playing in the Commonwealth Games, so we'll be with them there with Innocent Mew, who also played for me. And we wait and see.
Wow, we are cutting short your final submissions in terms of bowling as a sport, its development, its state going forward, the expectation like.
So for I'd like to say to the people, bowling is for you. You can play bowls from 9 to 99. So I'm sure the vast majority of Kenyans are within that age group. Come and play. We will show you how to play. You'll enjoy yourself. It's a good way to spend a day, even just an afternoon. Right? Social bowls is just played in one afternoon from 3 o'clock, and you'll have finished by 5:30 and continue their day. And all you need is just to kick off your shoes and play. Karibuni sana to bowling.
Thank you for joining us, and excellent pleasure it was for you to join us this particular afternoon and talk to us about the development of bowling as a sport and the expectations going forward in terms of, the activities lined up and the international events in Commonwealth Games which you seek to participate, and looking forward to see how that pans out, and all the very best. Thank you for coming.
Asanteni sana.
Of course, Touchline still continues. Don't go away. Stay tuned. My name is Maxwell Wasiko. Soro Robert is also still with us.